during the experience, um, as I was going through the black hole into the singularity, and I could see a point of light, but I couldn't reach it. And then all of a sudden, a being with white shimmering eyes, and it was in this purplish plume, and it felt very comforting.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ascension Gateway. And today I'm super excited because I am talking to some fellow authors here. We are compiling a little bit of our story, our NDEs, in a book called Death, a Compilation of Transformative Near-Death Experiences, due to be out March 21st. And so this is some of our group. There's 14 of us sharing our stories and in this book, and we were approached by this beautiful woman who asked us to share some of our NDEs in this compilation book. So welcome, everyone.
Hello.
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 Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
This
is just a small part of our group. Let's start with sharing a little bit about ourselves, about yourself, and a little bit of your background, and go ahead and go into your story that you're sharing in this book. And we can, of course, talk further about other experiences too. But Catherine, do you mind going first? Because I'm going around the room. Okay.
Sure, I'll break the ice.
Okay.
So my name's Catherine Annis. I am the owner and founder of the Dawning Institute, where I am transforming what we know about wellness to make it not only accessible to everyone who goes through the doors, but really combining a mind, body, soul healing approach. So my NDE, which is why we're here, I guess. So really it's, I wouldn't say it's fantastical. Sleep apnea actually runs in my family, and I never realized how bad it was until my 30s. But I was, I guess you could say, taken and given back when I was 17. So this was in 1999. I died in my sleep, and it was just the most beautiful experience I have ever had in my life. And in fact, it was my older brother that had passed away, I'd say about I was almost 10, so that would be about 7 years prior. He was the one that met me at the apex. So it was that tunnel of light, this overwhelming sense of love and unity and acceptance that I've never felt before nor since. And then to hear his voice at the end there, I don't really know how to put it into words, really give you the gravity of how wondrous it is. But he sent me back before I could even step foot. He sent me back, and I remember kind of having this energy pushing me backwards, back into my body. Of course, I was, as you could imagine, I was kicking and screaming the entire time back down. But I woke up, and it was one of those things where it hurt to breathe. Really, the air stung my lungs. My heart was almost beating out of my chest. My joints felt a little stiff, and it was really from that moment forward where I always knew I had a connection with him before. I felt him in my room a couple weeks after he passed. But it really kind of solidified that connection where I know whenever I need any kind of love or assistance or just to make me feel better, just I can call out to him and he'll be there, and he's helped me, guide me, um, been there for me ever since. And in fact, he's part of the reason why I was able to do what I do.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah. And you said this is your brother?
Yes, my older half brother.
Okay, nice. Wow, that's beautiful. I think maybe a lot of us can relate to the not being able to put it into words part.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
totally.
can't, it's one of those things you just can't unless you have felt that, unless you have experienced that, this love. You can't really find it to that extreme here on earth.
Right.
It really is in the beyond. Unfortunately, it's just not right here. And so, I believe that we've got to, at least those that understand the calling, we step up and we try to be that love. We try to show that love. We try to bring the beauty into the world. And maybe this is our little piece.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. Thanks for sharing that. Susan, do you mind going next?
Sure. I actually had two near-death experiences. My first one was at the age of 4, the second one at the age of 6. So it's been a process just remembering my experiences, but so that I don't take up the whole time, I'll just talk about the one I had at 6 because that's the one I do remember more vividly, and I think there was more that took place during that time. Um, and I had to go through experience some life-saving surgeries where actually I'd had several hernias at different times when I was a kid, but what caused both of them was the hernias ruptured.
Mm.
So rather serious that I get those fixed very quickly, but the one when I was 6, then I immediately went to the same place that I went when the one I was 4. And it was just like this very, music, amazing garden. The colors were so much more vivid, so much brighter. They almost glowed and sparkled in a way. And I was greeted by 3 beings that I know and I just automatically knew to be my 3 of my personal angels. And over the years, I've understood everybody has minimum 3. But and they greeted me. And the trees there were like the best way I can describe them is that I would equate them in size to the redwoods in California. Though at that time I'd never, I grew up on a farm in Iowa. I'd never seen anything like that. But even my angels that were probably, 15, 18 feet tall, even they were unable to reach the branches. And there was just, like wildflowers everywhere. There was small animals running everywhere. And as a kid, I was one of those, if there was a nest of baby mice, birds, snakes, whatever, I would find the nest and I just very gently play with them, then put them back exactly where I found them. So I was very comfortable with around animals. So it's like they just kind of occupied my time by showing me the world through the eyes of the animals. And the second one in particular, I went to even animals I was not familiar with, where I was eventually even swimming in the ocean and in this massive body. So I imagine it was some sort of whale. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't swimming in the ocean anymore. I was swimming in space, even though I seemed to be in this same being. And from there, I was shown like that first burst of creation is the best way I can describe it, but it was like I was seeing from this central light source, like all these souls would come out, and then some of them would go back in, like there was an exhale and an inhale breath. And this seemed to go back and forth several times. But I was shown that it was like I was in one of those that very first exhale. And my soul and two others were, it's like the best way I can describe it is pulled aside. And we were asked to become what the being called planet creators. Now, I'm still trying to figure out what that even means. But then, this being just kind of materialized almost as like a computer screen, but it was transparent and it rolled up and was flexible and it was, pretty good sized. And we were shown like what it would be like if we did take on these roles and what it would be like if we did not. The other two beings chose not to take on the role. I obviously did. And then I went through, and this part is I'm just starting to piece this part back together. I was actually went to some sort of training. There were a number of other beings actually also going through this same training. And it wasn't a school like we would know it. It was more like learning how to work with energy and geometry is the best way. But the geometry was energy. And there was a sound component to all this too. The other beings taking this same training, we would, a lot of us would recognize some of their names, Magdalene, Issa, also known as Yeshua or Jesus, Buddha, and just a number, I don't even know how many beings were taking the class, but it was many, possibly even hundreds. But, and then all of a sudden, I'm taken from this, this training program, and all of a sudden I'm waking up back in the hospital, and one of my grandmothers is sitting at my bedside, and she doesn't fully know that I'm awake because she's reading her favorite magazine, which was National Geographic. And on the cover was the Giza Plateau, though at the time I didn't know what it was. And I just looked at her and said, "Where's the rest of them?" I just somehow knew that there were more pyramids on the plateau. And it's really just been in the last, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, they discovered foundations formed, more temples, more pyramids, all of them, though not as large as, the two particularly large, the ones that we're familiar with, but they have found foundations for many more, just right there on the plateau, which I thought was kind of interesting.
That's amazing.
Mm.
I love that. I love that you were in a class. I have memories of doing something similar, creating planets and things like that. And
Yeah, and
wow.
I've continued to see my angels, ever since. I never stopped. They've
Wow.
always continued to be there for me.
And your art, you're an artist since you're
Yeah, and now I actually use that to help draw other people's angels for them, to give them a visual to connect with.
nice.
Actually, there's a couple, and it's some of my favorite. Here's a couple of the most recent ones.
Oh, wow. Those were gorgeous.
Yeah, it's like I see them as being just like, very transparent, kind of like that sunbeam coming down between the clouds. So I draw them much more intensely than I see them, but they're just they're made out of light.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll have everyone's details down in the, or everyone's information down in the details. Kind of just, yeah, if you want to contact anyone here for sure. Those are gorgeous. Wow. You just feel the energy from them. when you
Again,
found
I've been,
it out.
I started drawing other people's angels in 1997. So it was considerably a number of years after my NDE. Obviously, I was in my 30s by that time, but yeah, and it's just continued to evolve. It's like, and when people ask me where I, learned how to draw and now paint as well, it's like I'm angel taught is the best way I can describe it, because I've never taken a single art class.
Mm,
They
wow.
have taught me how to do this.
So both of your NDEs were when you were a child? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had my NDE was in 2001 in my 40s, and I didn't remember my other NDE as a child until after my 2001 NDE. And I've heard people say sometimes when they have one later in life that they remember they had one as a child.
Mhm.
But that's unusual to have two as a child that I've heard. That's crazy though. I love that. That's awesome. Wow. Can't wait to read everyone's stories. Okay. Thanks, Susan.
Mm. Thank
Megan, do you
you for
mind
allowing
going
me to
next?
share.
Oh, of course. We're not done yet.
No. Who's next?
Megan, do you mind going next?
Not at all. So my name is Megan Brown. I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory so that you understand why the last NDE was so profound. So I grew up on a farm in Southern California, of all things, and I grew up Roman Catholic. From the time I was little, I had so many different traumas happen in my life. Then I had I had my first near-death experience at age 9, where my best friend died, her mother died. And I had my second near-death experience at age 17, where I was pulled out of my body and I was going through space really, really fast and going past the planets and the stars. And I heard from this guru in India called Charan Singh. He looked at me and he said, if you want to come home, you can come home now. But I didn't know what home was. So I linked back to the thumb that I saw in where I was. I looked behind me. So fast forward, neither of these things changed my life in my mind. And then when I was 20, I was raped. And I thought, wow, okay, there really is no God. I mean, this just blows. My life just sucks. So then I became an atheist. So for 18 years, I didn't believe. And then there were moments where I would be like, well, is there? Well, what if there is? And whatever. So I didn't believe in anything. And when I was 38, I had this autoimmune disease, rare autoimmune disease that kicked in. And it nearly cost me my life. It was a multitude of different things, but the side effect was kidney failure. And I used to say after I was 20 years old that if there is a God, if there is a heaven, they would have to prove it to me. Well, I got pulled into heaven for 5 days from this near-death experience at 38. And I walked through the clouds, and I remember I saw Jesus standing under the trees to my left. And there was this beautiful park. And then, the sky is blue. There were clouds, birds flying. And I looked at him and I said, oh my God, you really do exist. To which he laughed. And then he opened up his arms, like inviting me to come give him a hug, which I thought was very nice because I didn't believe in him. So I just went and gave him a hug. And then he turned me sideways to walk with him. And he said, come on, we have a lot of work to do. And I said, yeah, no kidding. You're dealing with me. I get it. So then we went to meet my other guides, Archangel Michael, El Moria, Saint Germain, and Mother Mary. And I had to have my life review. As I was watching my life review, it was so powerful, so incredibly powerful, because it's every single moment, every thought that you've ever felt, every thought of the person that you're in the life review with, what you're both feeling. So it was very profound. After that, I was led by Archangel Michael to his golden capsule, where he had me, I thought it was that he had me kneeling down, but when I read my story again, it was me standing up. So anyway, he put his right hand up, and he had this white light coming out of his hand that was pointed here at my soul. And he started speaking the Aramaic version of Psalm 91. And at the end of it, I was just crying. And he said to me, Megan, why are you crying? And I said, because I didn't believe in any of you. And I've said all of these horrible things about you, which I will omit. But I said, I didn't believe in anything. And he said, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to love you. So we left his capsule, went back out, met with my other guides. Then we walked across this bridge, and there's this huge white temple with a giant dome in the center, and then two decks, one on each side of the door. And there was an angel in each side of the deck playing a trumpet. And they were playing this music, but it was to announce that we were coming. So Jesus went and opened up the door. I don't know who went in first or second, but I remember I went in right before Jesus, and Jesus was the last.
No.
Go ahead, Megan.
So as I was walking into temple, I see all of these souls sitting around the table, and it turns out that there were 77. Well, including me, I was 77. But Jesus walked up, pulled my chair out, and it's almost like I floated to my chair. And I sat down, and he sat to my left. Then there was this old man at the head of the table, and I thought, who's this guy? And then I'm looking around the table, and I saw Charan Singh, I saw Paramahansa Yogananda, I saw, who else did I see that I recognized? I don't remember, but then I'm looking around, and there's just these beautiful souls, and Archangel Michael was to my right, and then 26 other archangels after that. And I thought, this is incredible. What am I about to experience? What is this, right? So this old man started talking, and he just like is holding court, and I'm thinking, I'm listening, and everybody's watching him, and I'm looking at everybody around me, and I'm like, why are they listening to him? And all of a sudden he said, and Megan will be going back to Earth. And in that moment, I froze, and I only thought was OF. Yeah, the F word. And he stops and he looks at me. I didn't even say it out loud. And he said, OF is right, Megan. And then I went, oh my God, you are God. I am so sorry. Oh, please, your holiness. I was fumbling, asking for forgiveness, because I knew in the Roman Catholic Church when I was growing up, they always said God can hear everything, right? Well, I didn't believe it, but it's true. So I somehow found my way through that moment. And he said, I'm not offended. It's a man-made word. And he said, but let this be a lesson to you. I hear your thoughts too. So be careful what you think and what you wish for. And I'm thinking, wow. So then there was a point where I had to get up and stand up next to every single soul at the table. And I remember the first one that I remember was that comes to my mind right now is Goddess, who was at the opposite end of the table, the head of the other end of the table. And she looked at me and said, Megan, it's okay to be yourself. We want you to be yourself. Well, I had never heard that in my life. I had never been okay being myself. Nobody ever let me be myself. You know, it was always, I had to be this way, or I had to think this way, or I had to, obey because ... whatever it was. And so that was so interesting. Then I remember White Eagle looking at me and saying, Megan, I want you to think about something. When you come across a white feather, I want you to ask yourself, are you doing or are you being? And I stood there and I thought, oh God, how am I going to answer this? I'm gonna mess this up, like I'm being tested, right? I was gonna fail. And he looked at me and he said, no, you don't have to answer it. He says, I just want you to think about it. And I've never forgotten it from the moment he told me. Then there were all of these other incredible souls that I met with and I spoke to as well. And I remember God, I walked up to God. This was one of the times he and I conversed, because I was there for 5 days. So there was a lot of conversation. And he said to me, Megan, I want you to think of yourself as the driver in the car. He said, I'm your passenger, and you come to a fork in the road. Do you go left or do you go right? And I looked at him like, oh man, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. And he looked at me and he said, oh, it doesn't matter which way you go. He said, I'm always going to be with you. And I thought, wow. And then after he said that to me, I remember I stood there and I said, very respectfully, I said, can I touch your cheek? And he smiled and he said, okay. And so I picked it, like held my right hand up to his left cheek, and I just touched his cheek very gently. And then I pulled my hand back and I said, blessings received, because they taught me in that period of time that blessings received means thank you. That's the highest vibration of saying thank you. So I said, blessings received. And then I smiled and said, now I can go back and tell people I've touched the face of God. And so it was so monumental. Then there were all of these other conversations in there, but I remember also going into heaven, because they allowed me to stay in there for a while. And there were all of these courses and classes that I had to take. And one night, one day, I was walking down the sidewalk and I bump into Freddie Mercury from Queen, because I'd been a Queen fan since age 11. So I looked up and I was walking by myself. He was walking by himself. We're faced, and I looked at him and I go, oh my God, you're Freddie Mercury. And he said, oh yeah, casually, how are you? I feel horrible. I'm in kidney failure on earth right now. I'm in so much pain. I don't want to go back. Da, 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 da. And he said, well, do you want to go and have some fun? And I said, yeah. So he took my hand, he turned around, and we walked. I don't remember how far we walked or how long we walked, but we got to this amphitheater, this outdoor amphitheater, and he left me. And I was with all of these other souls in these white, I call them togas, because that's what it felt like. But he disappeared. And then all of a sudden there was this opening show that took place. And it was Billy Barty and Spike Jones who opened. And I have stories with both of those souls. And then the following show was Ella Fitzgerald and Cole Porter. And then after that, it was the Queen band. So it was Terry Kath, Marvin Gaye, Buddy Rich, Rick James, and of course, Freddie Mercury. And then it was incredible. And I've never had more fun at a concert. And then after that, we had gone back to my tent where I was staying. This is a part I loved this. So we're all sitting in the tent and we're drinking, because the angels, the little cherubs, were bringing in these decanters of red wine, and they were filling our glasses. And then there was bread in a golden woven bowl that was on this table. And it was this huge table. And there were all of the archangels that were in temple with me. There was everybody who was performing that night. We were all sitting. I happened to be sitting right across from Terry Kath, and then to his left, my right, was Freddie Mercury. So we were all laughing, and we were talking about our lives and just going on about past lives and who we were to each other in past lives. And I was related to them, or I was married to them, and it was interesting. We all interconnected somehow. And then all of a sudden, Prophet Muhammad walked in. And every one of us stood to our feet and bowed respectfully, because we knew he was such a high vibration of love. And he held up his hands and he indicated for all of us to sit down. And he just, without missing a beat, he just looked right at me and said, when you go back, I want you to tell the Middle East that I am always there with them. I have always been there with them. I have always prayed for them. I have always stood for peace. And he went on and on. And I looked at him and I said, may I ask you a question? When he was done talking, and he said, yes. And I said, respectfully, I grew up Roman Catholic, and then I was an atheist for 18 years. I don't know anything about being a Muslim. I said, why do you want me to go back with this message? And he said, I have my ways. Well, okay, but are you sure? I mean, you really want me to do this job? And so he said, I know you can do it. You know, he was very encouraging, but it was short, it was to the point. And then he said, I must leave now. And we all looked at him, and he said, directly staring in my eyes, he said, put the book out. So God, back in the beginning, when I got to heaven, had said in that first 5 minutes as well, put the book out. You're going to be writing a book. And I thought, well, I've never written a book in my life. You know, what do you want me to write about? And he said, you'll figure it out. And I thought, oh, yeah, okay. You know, so Prophet Muhammad said that to me. And then there were all of these other meetings that I had while I was there. I had meetings with President Abraham Lincoln, Gaius Julius Caesar, Sitting Bull, just all these different souls. And I thought, how do I do this? You know, but then I had to come back, and I was basically told that I had to come back, and there was all this buildup in me having to leave heaven. And how I got out was Jesus and I were talking, and Saint Germain was sitting under the olive tree, and he had his knees pulled up close to him. And Jesus was saying, well, you have to go back now. And I said, but Jesus, I don't want to go back. I said, I just want to stay here. I've never felt love in my life like this, ever. And you know my life. And he said, I don't make the rules, Megan. I follow them just like you do. And I thought, whoa, okay. So we hug. Oh, well, he showed me a picture of my then husband and our son. And telepathically, they both said simultaneously, don't go, we need you. So then I looked at Jesus and I said, oh, well, they need me. I have to go back. My son needs me. And he said, oh, okay, well, gotta go then. So then I gave him a hug and I left. And then I had to go to this shack. I don't remember how far down the dirt road it was, but I had to take off my toga and put it in the this wicker basket. And then I was walking, and all of a sudden I noticed all of the angels. Oh, I forgot to tell you, all of the angels, there were 300 golden cherubs that came into the tent when Prophet Muhammad came in while we were after the concert. So here are all of these golden cherubs again. And up in front of me to my left, and walking through the flowers and, you know, coming out of the trees was Prophet Muhammad. And I was like, whoa. And so it was like we met in the road. And I looked at him and I said, oh, I do not want to leave. And he said, you will never be alone. My hand is always at your back. And I thought, wow. And then I looked at him and I said, again, respectfully, I said, may I give you a hug goodbye? And so he said, yes. So I stood up on my toes because he was taller than me. And I put my arms around his neck. And then he put his arms around my back. And as long as I held him, he was holding me. And then as soon as I released my hands, he released his hands. And then I stood back down and I looked at him and I said, I love you. And he looked at me and he responded, I love you too. And so those were the words that I heard exiting heaven, like right before I walked through the clouds, because then I had to leave him and I had to walk through the clouds. And then I remember waking up in my hospital room. And I didn't remember just seeing him. I remembered seeing Jesus. So I woke up and there was a nurse next to the bed and I said, oh my God, I just saw Jesus. And she was like, you just saw Jesus? And I said, yeah, I did. Because I just seen him right before Prophet Muhammad. So it was very long and involved. But as a result of that, I got my proof. So remember earlier, I was saying that I needed proof to believe that there was a God and heaven. I got proof. And the common message, the thread throughout the entire experience there, God, Goddess, Archangel Michael, Jesus, Prophet Muhammad, everybody kept saying to me, acceptance is synonymous with love. So that was the main message. And it's so important that people know that.
Wow. I would say you probably got your proof.
Totally. Yeah.
And you did write a book, right?
I did. I wrote the book about my near-death experience called A Catalyst, My 5 Days in Heaven. And then during my divorce, I was ordered by heaven in my meditation to write about love every day. So what I did was I wrote another book. I just compiled all of these daily thoughts because that's what they are. It's poetry and daily thoughts. And it's another book called Love's Recipes. And so that's out as well.
Nice. Amazing. Yeah. But one question.
Yeah.
What did Archangel Michael look like?
Oh, he was beautiful. He was 6'7". I refer to him as being black, but in my book, I refer to him as dark brown. But to me, it's like, I'm like, okay, well, I looked at him and it's like, okay, dark brown. But some people would say, well, that's considered black, and I'm like, well, he is what he is, but he's dark skinned, as is Jesus, by the way. And Archangel Michael had hair down to his shoulders that was like black hair, and it was wavy. And his eyes are absolutely beautiful. I mean, he is the most stunning being I've ever seen. I mean, they all were in heaven. They
Yeah.
were all absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful. But he was 6'7". I mean, he was this powerhouse. And when I felt him put Psalm 91 on my chest, and my soul, I could feel his power. Like, I was so happy that he was, putting love on me. I wouldn't want to be on the destroying evil end of him, where he goes and, basically annihilates evil. So yeah, I'm on the good side.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. I'm gonna get your book, for sure. Michael, thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
You're up.
Okay. My name is Michael Mayhood, and I had my near-death experience on September 10th of 2021. When all the I can't really explain how I got to the death point. I came across a new term today that actually fits it pretty well, that it was a complete spiritual emergency. I it felt like an attack on my person spiritually, and I got very sick, lost consciousness, and drowned in my toilet. And I at that point, I knew that I died, and I remember being in complete utter blackness. And when you're aware, and I thought, oh my God, this is it. I'm alone with and I'm stuck in dark. But then I slowly felt a pulling sensation, and then I was so slowly being pulled from my body, from the back of my head, until I could see what had happened to me from up above. And then I shot like a rocket up through the sky until I saw Earth from below, and then until it was a mere speck in the cosmic dust. Then as I passed through planets, and it felt like I had a 360 picture of everything around me. Once I was approaching what it looked like a black hole, and with the event horizon around it with all the colors. And within that, as I was falling into that event horizon, that's where I was starting every life all at once, past, future, until I was slowly pulled in.
Okay,
And
can I
then,
interrupt you for a second, Michael?
oh yeah,
So you're just cutting out a little bit. So you said something about lives. You were Were you
Oh,
seeing all your lives?
yep. I was seeing
Okay.
all of my past, present, and
Okay.
future lives all at once.
Thank you. Wow.
It was I couldn't really pick out of what was happening until later on. After my NDE, I was starting to have dreams that would seem to slow the storyline. And then I would have one night, have one life in a dream. And then if that life wasn't done within one night, it would continue where I left off. um, but during the experience, um, as I was going through the black hole until the singularity, and I could see a point of light, but I couldn't reach it. And then all of a sudden, a being with white shimmering eyes, and it was in this purplish plume, and it felt very comforting. It felt like I knew this being all of my life, and then it telepathically told me, "Yep, sorry." And then I fell. It felt like I fell like a ton of bricks right back into my body,
Mm.
and I jumped awake, and then I was able to get my breath again, and that's about it.
That's about it. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I missed a little bit of what you said there. You cut out a little bit when you said the white light or the pinpoint of light. Did you have a
Oh,
conversation with that pinpoint of light that you recognize?
it felt very um familiar. It felt like I've always known that being for lifetimes. And then it telepathically told me, you can't stay. It's not your time yet.
Mm.
And then I fell like a ton of bricks right back into my body. And
Wow.
that shortly after I started like Susan, I started painting what I saw
Yeah.
within like little bits of little pieces of the things I saw, and I started to paint them. But yeah.
Nice. Nice. Wow. There's so much there. So you mentioned that your lifetimes were coming to you after, afterwards in dreams and things like that.
Yeah.
Because I was going through the same thing with mine too, where
Yeah.
I was remembering lifetimes afterwards. And I think Susan, you talked about that your NDE was unfolding kind of in segments. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's how it was for me too.
Yeah. And as because it was something that, just doing the normal thing of, getting married, having kids. It was a lot of things, I kind of put it on the shelf, not really realizing that not everybody had, some sort of experience like this, and that not
Mm.
everybody could see their angels like I did. And, it was once I started, which was really probably about 3 years ago now. I'd been saying for a while that I had a near-death experience, but I didn't share any of the details about it, even why. And once I started sharing, then a lot of the a lot of the memories of it started coming back a little bit at a time. The more I talk about it, the more details I remember. And I think there's still
Right.
more details for me to remember.
Yeah. I kind of feel that way about all of us, actually.
Hmm.
I mean, it's just such a profound experience and so much in there. So, yeah, it took me a while, and I had my second one in 2001, and although I was already starting to have out of body experiences at that time, things started coming to me in segments. And then as I began meditating very, very strongly and on like a fiend, then it just it just all started coming like crazy and uncovering a whole bunch of experiences that didn't make any sense until I started communicating with Yeshua, with Archangel Michael, with El Morey, Saint Germain, White Eagle, all those peeps, and things. And what I love hearing about other people's experiences is there's so much there that confirm my own experiences. Do you feel that too? Anyone? When you hear, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
A
like,
lot of what,
go ahead, Kathy.
sorry,
Go ahead, Kathy.
a lot of what you're bringing up about remembering, your NDEs, it actually resonates more with my awakening after, let's say, after I got off all these psychiatric medications I never needed.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
I kind of feel like these awakenings maybe were part of a trip home, what we would call a near-death experience, and it's part of it. And so we were just seeing that there, maybe in it's in my experience anyway. And we just had to come back here and live it out. Does that make sense? Whoops. Oh, we lost Megan.
Mhm.
We just had to go through the motions, play the role, I guess you could say.